Oh, I guess it's doing something. Whoops. Well, good evening. It's Christmas Day, and figured we go ahead and try another video. I'm Ray, and we're gonna go ahead and do a little bit of train running down here, and I'm gonna go ahead and get my daughter to turn out the lights once we get the trains moving, and we're just gonna do this one here is just gonna be kind of off the wall and just showing you what this thing has got, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and flip the camera, stop this, flip the camera, and we'll go from there. Okay, for this next part, I figure maybe what I would do is just go through and kind of give an overview to some of the motive power that's either presently on the layout or it's on the display shelf, because I don't have room for everything at the moment, which is one of the reasons why I want to make the layout a little bit bigger. I guess we'll start with the freight locomotive over here. We've got a Delaware and Hudson. It's a Baldwin Shark Nose. It's fairly new. It's a Bachmann Spectrum. I got it about 2 years ago. And the other one is a chassis system. That's an F7. I believe that's an Athearn frame, blue box frame. That's powering that locomotive. At one point in time, my dad had gone through and just bought a whole bunch of shells, and we were, swap shells so that we have different railroads. Well, that got to be a little bit more of a pain than what I wanted to be, and I'm actually in the process of seeing if I can find some Athearn frames to put underneath some of the shells, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here in a little bit. But over into the freight yard here, we've got ourselves a mixed match of different stuff here. That's an Athearn. I believe that's a GP18. Next to it is an F3. It's actually a AHM locomotive. The first one's an Athearn. The next one is actually an old AHM. Next to that is a locomotive painted up for the Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac. I believe that one is also an Athearn. If not, it is a Bachmann. I can actually tell a little bit more on the other side. We have, next to that, we have a custom painted Virginian locomotive that I bought on eBay a few years back. That's also an Athearn. Then we have a custom painted Rock Island that was given to me by a buddy of mine. That's also an F unit, obviously. I'm not sure about the livery for this thing, but hey, it looked pretty cool, and I thought, what the heck, we'll put it on the layout. And here in front, we have a Western Maryland BL2. That is a Proto 2000 from Lifelike. I've had that for quite a few years. I actually bought that while I was in the service in South Carolina. Over here, we have a Southern RS1. Or RS3, I think it's actually an RS1. This one here I just picked up last year at the, actually earlier this year, at a train show here that they have at the Timonium Fairgrounds. I'm from Maryland. I try to model a lot of I guess I'm more favoring the East Coast railroads than I do anything else. On the back here for the passengers, we've got an Athearn Baltimore and Ohio, another F unit. And of course we saw this dude the other day. That is an Athearn PA1, painted up for the Boeville Newtown. Here again, it's the only locomotive on the layout that actually is painted for the home railroad. Eventually I'll get to operating, and when we do that, I'll show you the locomotives that are actually under Wakert Hill, and I kind of explained that one in that first video, of how Wakert Hill is basically a quote-unquote staging area. It's the go ahead and bust it up to make it look like this thing is a lot larger than what it actually is. And when I do a quote-unquote operating session, we actually have, for the person who runs the passenger line, which we're looking at the passenger control panel again, and the freight panel, which is another operator. There's actually a time schedule for the passenger trains, and for the freight trains there isn't actually a time schedule. It's just bring a train in, break it apart, put another one together, send it out on the line. So I'm going to stop the video here for a minute, and we're going to go over here and talk about the rest of the equipment. Okay, so here we are in front of the display case, and this is where I store at the moment either the locomotives that are all these locomotives run, by the way. They're either sitting over here mainly because I have no room to run them, or in the case of some of these larger ones, and we're going to point those out here in a minute, the larger ones I actually can't run on the layout because of how long they are and where the stop tracks actually sit. If I were to run one of these larger locomotives, I'd only be able to pull 2 or 3 cars. So that's the reason why they're not on the layout at the moment. So anyway, in front here we have a New Haven E33. Behind it is a Pennsylvania GG1. Behind that is a rather unique locomotive. I believe they called them an E60CF. And I've actually got 3 of them. As you can tell, one of them is painted bright orange. Somebody, in their infinite wisdom, went and painted it orange. Mainly the only reason why I bought that particular one is because the first one that I bought, the drive system was kind of screwed up. And the one that's in the box has actually only been on the layout once, just to see if it runs, and it runs, and it runs. So it sits in the box. Out here in front we have a another Athearn unit. I forgot what the heck this thing is. It's a big one. I can tell you that much. That and the next 2 locomotives. The next 2 locomotives are actually FP45s. They're lifelike normal build. Those were bought while I was in the service back in the late 80s, early 90s. Behind that is an AHM Sea-Liner painted up for the Reading Railroad. Again, I'm a big fan of the East Coast railroads, mainly the Chessie system, Western Maryland, Chesapeake, and Ohio, so you're going to see a lot of that. And I started expanding a little bit into some of the other railroads, and we'll get to that. Out here in front is another oddity. I kind of like odd locomotives too. I guess it's just because I'm an odd person, but that's beside the point. If my daughter were here, she'd be laughing at me. That is a crew cab. I think it's a B23Q or something like that. Actually, I've got locomotive cards right underneath it here. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a BQ237 or 23-7. And that was a crew cab. It was, I guess they were doing that when they first started getting rid of the cabooses. Behind that is a Southern unit. And here again, I'm going to have to, pardon my fingers. I made up these neat little pockets for the locomotives. This is actually an SD24, the Southern unit. Trying to remember who that was, and I don't remember off the top of my head. And of course, yeah, let's go back over here for a minute. Since I pulled the card, that's an SD. This unit out front here, that's an SD 40-2. That's an Athearn blue box. Over on this side here, we've got a older Pennsylvania. This is actually an old Varney or old Tyco unit. These things are a bear to work on. Thus, one of the reasons why it's sitting over here. It's a standby unit. I don't run it very often because it is a pain to work on. Here again, I know somebody left a comment the other day. Oh, it's neat to see the classics running. Yeah, it's really nice, except for when you can't find the parts to keep them going anymore. Behind that is another AHM. That's a New Haven Sea-Liner. Behind that's an Erie Lackawanna Sea-Liner AHM. We have a Rock Island, GP9. And then we have the Burlington Northern U33B. And then, of course, going over here, we have another Rock Island unit. This one here is a U30. And then we have a Erie Lackawanna GP7, and then we have a New Haven F3, and this here is actually a old Boeville unit. Again, get my fingers out of the way, you might be able to see things. The neat thing with that New Haven locomotive, and there's one other one up here, that's an old Boeville, and that's actually rubber band driven. Talk about hard time finding parts. Yeah, any rate, up on this shelf, we actually have, remember I was telling you about the shells? Well, there you go. No, nothing to it, just a shell. That's all there is there, so those are my spares, and hopefully eventually I'll actually get some frames for them with some motors and be able to do that and actually get them up and running. But until then, they sit. And we're over here. We're going to get into some antique stuff. This here is an old Tyco unit. It's an old die-cast. This was one of my father's locomotives. Behind it is actually an old Varney locomotive. This one back here. And then there's actually, because of the fact that I was trying to find parts, I've actually picked up a couple extra ones, but so far trying to keep them running has not been very easy at all. In fact, if you take a look at the Tyco unit, the drawbar isn't the old piece of fiber that it used to be, and in fact I even had to replace the coupler on the back of it. Needless to say, that does not run at all that often. This unit in front, this Pennsylvania unit, actually is not mine. It belongs to a buddy of mine. It's a old American Flyer. It smokes and it actually choo-choos as it goes down the track. Here again, for obvious reasons, I don't run it because it is an older locomotive. Behind that is your Spirit of 76. That is an old Tyco unit. That thing is don't even get me started. Behind that, we have another smoking locomotive. That there is actually another Bachmann locomotive. I've had some issues with it, so that isn't presently running, I don't believe. And behind that is a Chattanooga locomotive. That there was given to me by a friend of mine. And then over here, getting into the shadows, we have some of my large steam locomotives. All the way in the back is that's a 484. It's a chassis system. The next one in line is, and that's a Bachmann unit. The next one in the line is an old AHM 210-2, painted up for the Baltimore, Ohio. Next to that is a 282. This here is a custom locomotive. It's actually a die-cast. I don't have a brand name on it. We bought it at a swap meet years ago. And then out here in front, as the thing shifts, is a 462. I believe that is I believe that might be an older Bachmann unit also. Moving up the line here, that is a Mantua Southern Crescent Limited. Very expensive die-cast locomotive. That's one of the reasons why it's in a plastic case sitting up here. Probably should do that with a couple of the other things that I've got. Namely, behind this Baltimore, Ohio thing here is the Dale Earnhardt train set. I've only got a couple pieces to that. And then over here, and I know somebody had just gotten some Santa Fe stuff. And this is an old Revell. Again, this here is also a rubber band driven locomotive. It's an electric motor with a rubber band that goes down to the drive wheels. The 1776, that's an old Tyco unit. Behind that's a Mantua, Baltimore and Ohio. That's the George Washington. And of course, those in front, out in front, if anybody has younger kids, they all know that that's Emily. Well, my daughter was into Thomas the Train years ago, and well, that's the reason why we've got Emily over here, and then we actually have Percy on the freight layout. So I'm going to go ahead and back off, and if you have anything that you guys want to talk about or want me to kind of bring up, that's fine. Comments are always welcome. Subscriptions are great, obviously. You know what? Let me see if I can... there we go. Let's try this. Anyway, back to the ugly fellow behind the camera. If you guys have any questions, comments, subscriptions are great. Comments are even better, because I'm kind of at a loss as to what else I can do, because I don't have that big of a layout, actually. If you want me to talk about some of the construction methods that I've used so far, and so on and so forth, just let me know, and I appreciate it. I will talk to you all later. Merry Christmas.